Hi everybody, this is Damien from Legend Life. As you know, we're all about sharing inspirational stories of people over 40 who are living their best life. Today I have the pleasure of speaking to Paula Reid. She's an adventurer. She's done a vast array of adventures. She's paddled the Mekong, she's kayaked the Thames, she's cycled across Europe, like 12 countries, I believe. She's also skied across Antarctica to the South Pole, and she's also sailed around the world. But not only that, she's also an author. And the reason I actually also wanted to bring her on board because she's written a book called Live Life to the Full. And then she's also had an adventure psychologist, so we'll learn a little bit more about that. So how are you today, Paula?
I feel better now. I've listened to all that. Thank you.
Very good. So to get started, maybe you can give us a little bit of a background on, what your background is. Where'd you get started? Have you always been into adventure outdoors?
Okay, so I'm based in the UK for a start, as I appreciate some of your audience might be global. So I was brought up in the very countrified, leafy green area of the south of England, a place called Sussex. And really ever since I was a kid, I enjoyed adventuring and just going outside. So I'm 53, and in those days when I was growing up, it was quite okay to just go outside and play like all day. So I might leave the house at 9 o'clock in the morning and then just come back hungry and dirty at 6 p.m. after a cracking day of exploring and climbing trees and walking through hedges and across fields and building camps and all sorts. So I loved that. And I think that gave me a nice, healthy boost of fresh air and confidence as I was growing up. I then, when I was about 13 at school, I got in with the naughty crowd, so I was quite good and well behaved up to that point, and I started to socialise with the more naughty, rebellious people at my school, and really enjoyed that, and just going off the beaten track a bit and kind of exploring the boundaries of who I am, I suppose, and not necessarily always following the same track as everybody else. The school I was at, a comprehensive school, also took 7 of us on a trip to India for a month when I was 16, which was very unusual and really off the beaten track and very remote and challenging. So I think that actually formed an idea in my mind when I was 16 about, one, how amazing the world is and how beautiful and stunning and interesting it is, but also how much I thrived when I was in a very challenging and difficult environment. So that gave me the taste for like backpacking and traveling. And then finally, if I may, Damien, my last point is I used to review my calendar at the end of each year and kind of write down the highlights, like I bought a new car or passed my driving test. And I realized that some years were really full of amazing headlines and activity and experience, and some years were a bit quiet and flat. So I've realized that proactively I could pack a lot more into my years by making things happen and living life to the full. So that's the build up of me as a person till I was about 20.
Okay, so you've always had this urge to plan, prepare, look at what you can do?
Well, it's an interesting balance between spontaneity, which I also love. So just, the spontaneous action of just doing something with no planning. But I also believe that if you are a bit thoughtful or slightly proactive about what you want to achieve in life, then you will also achieve more. So I think for me, spontaneity is more playful and planning is a bit more like you might achieve bigger things or higher goals, perhaps with a bit more forethought. So a nice mixture of the two.
Okay. So when you were growing up, were there any particular sports or activities you spend most of your time doing, or something you developed a little bit later in life?
I think I was always outdoorsy, so and I didn't feel as a girl that I was limited to the sort of tough, dirty, adventurous side of life. I grew up with a big garden, and I used to help my dad, do some building work or cut down trees or have a bonfire. So I was happy in my own skin, and I didn't feel there was a gender difference. So I think I was quite kind of tough and outdoorsy and adventurous. Some people would call it sort of tomboy-like, but I don't think that phrase is quite appropriate anymore.
No.
But I certainly was, quite just more tough and outdoorsy than sporty.
Okay. So what was your first adventure? So how did you decide I'm going to be an adventurer? This is going to be my first adventure.
I think the first one was that school trip, actually, where it was suggested that there was going to be a trip to India for a month, and could they have a few of the students to go on the trip? And I don't know, can't remember exactly what appealed, but I remember being very excited by the idea of such a unique and going to India from the UK is quite a big deal when you're 16. Yeah. So I remember being very excited about that and up for it straight away. And I think part of my personality, if you like, is to say yes rather than say no, and be an immediate like, yep, that's me, I'm in. So I think that is part of who I am. And there wasn't much thought at all. It's like, yeah, fine, I'm up for that. So that was my first adventure, really, because as I say, we were really in remote India. And it was a very challenging, quite difficult at times trip at quite a young age. So that was the first adventure.
Okay. And then what was in adult life? What was the first adventure then? Like, as I said, obviously you had a school background, which gave you a taste. And then obviously there was some kind of a process you went through and said, oh, I enjoyed that. And now I'm going to set myself some kind of an achievement. So walk me through how you came up with that kind of a decision.
I think the traditional coming of age backpacking around the world type trip was quite a biggie. I didn't do it straight away. I wasn't a teenager, but that was a big adventurous 10 months of going to very remote places like Borneo. So typical, everything on your back, and landing in a place and not knowing anyone and just just sorting yourself out. So very, self-sufficient and happy to go with the flow for nearly a year, just backpacking around the world. So that was a big one, and it gave me a lot of experiences that I still remember very well. So that was probably my early 20s.
Okay. And so you've got multiple adventures, things you've accomplished. Which ones would you say is your biggest accomplishment?
So when it comes to, using that word accomplishment rather than my favorite or the funniest one or anything, if we look at accomplishment, I'm really proud of two of the big ones, and you've mentioned them already. One was skiing full distance from the coast of Antarctica to the South Pole. That took 46 days. It was skiing for 1,000 kilometers uphill into the wind in minus 40 degrees, pulling a sledge that weighed 80 kilograms. And that was all due to personal effort. There's no vehicle and not really even a team as such to pull you along. It was all personal effort that got you along that really arduous expedition. And I also had a severe cold injury on both my legs from day 7. So I'm super proud of that as an accomplishment, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And then on a whole different way, the yacht race around the world, it was the Global Challenge Round the World Yacht Race, which is quite a famous yacht race. And that was another 10-month expedition. And I was one of 18 people on a race boat, racing 24 hours a day for like weeks on end, going around Cape Horn, and that high performance team energy made it a different experience, but one again I'm really proud of accomplishing.
Okay, so let's go back to the trip Antarctica, because that's more of a personal experience. So how did you come up with the idea, I'm going to ski across Antarctica? Because most people wouldn't come up with that. That's my next trip. It's a little bit more challenging than most people would go on.
That's part of the trouble, though, Damien. I think, you know, we limit ourselves with what we think we can do,
Yeah.
and yeah. So I have a bucket list of things to do before I die. I call it my live life to the full list, and it's essentially all the things you want to do before you kick the bucket, right? So I've got a list of all the things that I have done, and at the moment there's about 120 things on there that I've done that I consider to be a significant experience. And then I've constantly got a list on the go of all the things that I might want to do in the future. And some things go on that list without much research or thought. And on that list was North Pole / South Pole question mark. So in a way, it's kind of an obvious bucket list item, because, like, who wouldn't want to go to Antarctica
Yeah.
or see the penguins, or go to where, you know, the famous expeditions went, you know, Scott of the Antarctic or Amundsen or Shackleton. You know, it's a classic, iconic, heroic place to go, really. But it did have a question mark, because I didn't realise or think that I personally would or could do that. So that's an interesting sort of a limit that I had in my head. However, one year I felt like doing quite a big expedition. I was looking at my bucket list and I was thinking, oh, okay, North Pole, South Pole, Arctic, Antarctic. I wonder what that would involve or how much that would cost. And then when I started to research it, it became more and more real or tangible or you know, doable in my head. And then I started to talk to other people who'd done one or the other. So I had some personal stories and experience about what it was like. Eventually I met up with a lady called Helen who runs training and expeditions, and she said, yeah, Paula, you can do that. And I'm like, really? She said, yeah, why not? You've already got the, you know, the life experience, the resilience, the grit, from all the other stuff you've done. You've got the attitude. That's the main thing. You can train for it, you can get fit for it, you know, why not? So she kind of gave me permission, if you like, and made me feel like I could, which I think is quite important with people, you know, just not limiting themselves with I can't. But as soon as somebody or yourself even says I can, then suddenly it becomes, you know, possible, even skiing to South Pole.
Oh, very good. So what was the preparation for this trip?
Loads. How long have you got, Damien? There was loads. There was all the kit, all the physical actual kit and equipment, which took, I don't know how many hours, but it took weeks of my time in the build up to research it and work out exactly what was the right piece of kit, because once you're down there, there's no shops, of course, so you can't change your mind. So it took me a year to get ready. So kit, physical fitness, mental fitness, logistics, money, training. I had lists and lists of things that I had to do, activities and tasks and training. I was physically training 6 days a week, mostly pulling 2 tires on a harness along my beach. Obviously going to gym, concentrating on core stability and core strength, running and cardiovascular fitness as well, and strength and muscular fitness. So fitness was a massive part of getting ready. But then there was the, you know, logistics and the physical kit. But also now I talk about the psychology of these things, and part of it was the mental preparation, so that I could be psychologically ready and resilient for when I knew that I was going to have a difficult time down in Antarctica. So there was an awful lot of preparation. And although I was working at the time and maintaining, you know, paid income, a lot of my spare time was, of course, getting ready for it for a year. And I went to Norway twice as well to train, because you have to learn how to free heel ski, and also how to cook inside a tent, and camp in the snow and all sorts of things. So there was 2 expeditions to Norway as well in preparation.
Okay, so you said the mental side is very important. So like even you mentioned that you had some problems in the first 7 days. So, you know, that mental training must have been very important to, you know, ensure you could keep on going. So what kind of mental preparation did you go through?
Well, this was before I did a degree in psychology, so I didn't have the theory behind me like I do now.
Yeah.
However, there was some common sense preparation. So things like talking to other people who'd been there gives you a virtual experience of it. So if you can talk it through with somebody and imagine being there and place yourself there mentally and understand the detailed embodied experience that other people have had, then you can begin to appreciate in advance. It's called anticipatory thinking. You can imagine in advance what you might experience and what you might expect to come across, and that mental preparation has proven to be great for like survival skills, and to get you mentally ready should it get tricky, which it obviously was going to get tricky at one point.
Yeah.
And then just reading up on other expeditions, reading books about Scott was quite harrowing because it's such a horrendous story and traumatic journey. And when you know you're about to kind of do it, obviously not as tough as he had it, but it does kind of make you a bit anxious to read those sorts of accounts before you go.
Yeah.
And then kind of coaching, you know, people just coaching me through, have I got everything? Have I packed this? Have I trained for that? Have I thought about X or Y? So just now and again, mental rehearsals, or talking it through with my parents or my boyfriend at the time, so that I could make sure I had everything mentally checked off as well. So there was various things, but it was just common sense because, as I say, it was before I did my master's degree in positive psychology.
Yeah. So during the actual trip, so how do you keep yourself, you know, motivated? As you said, like in day 7, you had some kind of issues. So, you know, you have that problem most of us have, negative thinking starts to creep in. So how do you deal with that and make sure you can work your way through it and just keep on going? Because, you know, it's not like you can just go, oh, I need to get out of here now, and then you're in the middle of the Antarctica. So
And have
how
a
do you,
cold beer.
yes. So
Catch
how
some
do you
cake
deal?
in the face to cheer you up.
Yeah, well, it does quite work there. So how did you deal with that?
Well, that's exactly what I train people and businesses for now. It's that sustainable performance despite adversity and uncertainty and challenge and, you know, in extreme environments. That's what I now do for my living, is the
Yeah,
adventure psychology. So it is literally, how do you keep going when things are tough? And right now we're experiencing a pandemic, which is COVID, and there's a lot of uncertainty and challenge around. So it's how do we mentally, you know, cope or survive or thrive even in difficult conditions. So before I left, I had 31 things that I was scared or worried about. So 31 risks and fears that I had in advance of the trip. Interestingly, if you divide them between risk and fear, the risky things you do a risk management strategy for. You know, you try and reduce the risk or get rid of the risk, of course. With fear, you kind of have to lean into it and embrace it and work with it. So first of all, there's 2 different sets of concerns. There's the actual risks, which are kind of objective and you can manage. And then there's the internal fears that you have to have psychological strategies to cope with. So that was one thing. Motivation, I had many strategies. One was just I took my iPhone and I managed to play when the phone was warm enough and it would work. I managed to play music which was really pumped up, you know, dance music, motivational, you know, pumped music, and that really loud in my ears just really helped. Sometimes I also listened to some books that I downloaded, so that was a distraction technique. I also used to play mental games inside my head for distraction, They do say that just counting, even, you know, counting literally from 1 to 10,000 can help with distraction as well, especially when you're experiencing pain or you're fatigued. So they were some strategies. And then I think my past experiences helped with the resilience that I'd built up over time. So remembering back to other times when I'd toughed it out and hadn't quit. So they were good reference points. And then also when the going got really tough, I used to think about other people or other circumstances that were probably worse than mine. So for me, I used to think of some of our military in Iraq or Afghanistan and probably what they'd been through. And if they could survive that, then I could blooming well survive skiing to the South Pole. So I had all sorts of different strategies.
Okay, very good. So what was the feeling when you finally, you know, hit day 46 and then you finished the whole journey?
It's hard to even put to words. It's almost undescribable. I was in a huge amount of pain by then. So my legs had really deteriorated and I couldn't take strong painkillers because, of course, I was still active. So I was in a huge amount of pain, almost delirious with pain anyway. And then I got delirious because I'd got to the South Pole. So absolute pride and achievement and accomplishment and all that personal pride. Then you've got the kind of awe of actually being at the South Pole. So, you know, everywhere is north. You're physically at the most southern part of the whole world. Antarctica itself is an incredibly fascinating and almost surreal continent. And then you've got the iconic Antarctic Research Station just in front of you, and a big board with quotes from Scott and Amundsen. So you've got some history creeping into the atmosphere. So it's just almost an overwhelming experience. The pain, the pride, the awe and wonder about where I was, and then kind of a mixture of still being primed for performance, but beginning to wonder if I could relax for the rest of my life. You know, if a real toilet and a real cup of tea were not that far away now. So all sorts of things going on.
Okay. So what did you learn about yourself? What did you come away, you know, different perspective, new thoughts about what you were capable of? I mean, because it's quite an achievement.
Yeah, the main thing, which I think is almost the most important thing, is just that, you know, we human beings are so capable and so amazing when we try to do these things. I think we only scratch the surface in life normally, and that we've got a cotton wool generation growing up, and we're generally fairly safe and warm and dry and not really pushed to our limits. I know there's lots of difficulty in life, but really we don't have to dig that deep that often, and just to realize that actually our human spirit and soul and psychology and bodies are incredible, and we can achieve so much, and that includes me, obviously, that I've done that, and if I can do that, then, you know, I could almost do anything. It was incredible confidence boost.
Very good. So you'll definitely be someone who would recommend everyone needs to get out of their comfort zone, take on some kind of an adventure. It doesn't have to be very big, or could, you know, as extreme as maybe you had, just to learn a little bit more about yourself and what you're actually capable of.
Definitely, Damien. I'm a big advocate of that. I've done a TED talk about that, for goodness sake. It's all it's so people say, why can't I just be comfortable? Why can't I sit in an armchair, watch television and have a cup of tea for my whole life? Really, you know, if you step out of that comfort zone, that armchair, you learn, you grow, you learn about yourself, you learn about the world, you develop so many skills and muscles and strengths, and it prepares you for the journey ahead, because life's a journey, and it's full of ups and downs and challenges and trauma and difficulty and struggle. And I think, on a way, going on an adventure is a proactive way of getting your mind and body ready for the adventure that is to come, which is life. So it does strengthen you and give you skills to cope with everything else. But also, I just think you know, you gain so much wisdom and experience and memory, and you're making the most of life. I'm not sure if there is life after death, but there's certainly life before death. So flipping make the most of it.
No, very good recommendations. So what advice would you give to someone who, you know, would like to do an adventure, has a challenge, they've got a dream, but they're just a little bit scared to take the next step, you know, to come up with excuses, it's going to cost a lot of money, it's going to take time. You know, they're just worried, you know, they're not the, I want to be a couch potato, but they actually are looking to do it, but, you know, just worried about how to do the first step. So what would your advice for them be?
Yeah, well, to talk to you possibly, or talk to me, or talk to somebody who's a positive influencer and who gives them strength, because other people are quite a strong support network sometimes. And if you listen to the naysayers and the worriers and the whingers in life, then it is going to impact your determination and your strength of attitude. So teaming up or talking with or building a network of support people really helps. You know, people who go, yeah, you can do that, or go for it, or I'll come with you, or I'll do some training with you, or that's a good idea, or of course you've got the skills to do it. You know, all those positive energy giving people, it really helps. Also, I think within reason, just taking that first step, because that gives you momentum. So whatever it is to start, whether it's buying the rucksack or signing the form for your entry into the endurance race, or paying 10 quid to enter a mountain climbing festival, or telling your mate you will meet them at 6 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, any of that sort of minor commitment just to get you started really helps, because it forces that first step. And once you're progressing, you've got momentum on your side, and then you've got the flywheel effect that, you know, one step follows another, and once you start, it's much easier to carry on. It's the starting bit that's hard, because you're just sitting there comfortably thinking about this chasm between you and the adventure. So a few small steps to get you going, a small commitment to get you going, and get the right people around you who give you strength and energy and support.
No, brilliant. So what's next for you? Like, I believe you've got another big adventure planned, crossing 50 countries. So tell us a little bit about that one.
So I've got 3 big ones in my sights at the moment. We're in lockdown with COVID, so there's not a lot going on at the moment.
Yeah.
But I'm in the middle of one, which is, it's called 50 Good Turns. And the idea is to cycle across 50 countries and do 1 good turn in each. So I've done 12, and they were all fabulous experiences. And I'm really looking forward to doing the other 38 as soon as possible. Hopefully in the spring, if we're allowed to travel, I'm planning to crack on with that in like April, and cycle across more countries. That's a great life experience. I've also got my sights on skiing to the North Pole, because it's very different from the South Pole. It's much more of a dynamic and fluid landscape, and much more sort of a physically changing environment, with polar bears instead of penguins. Yeah. And then I've also got my eye on the row across the Atlantic, which is an annual event from the Canary Islands to the Caribbean, which leaves about November. So I quite fancy that, but I've had a shoulder injury and shoulder surgery, which isn't great for rowing, as you can imagine. So I'm getting my fitness back.
Okay, so these are things on your live life to full list. You just added them to the list because you were inspired, you heard someone else had done it. So how did that work?
Yeah, the list is ongoing. It's on my website, but also I've just got a sort of recent version on my phone, so I can just literally type on my phone if something occurs to me in the moment. And that will be ideas that I've seen, you know, in a book, a magazine, somebody's told me about, on a website, TV show. So anything that I become aware of and I think, actually, that sounds kind of cool. I found an article a couple of days ago, I think it was on Instagram, about the annual hair freezing championship in Yukon in Canada. There's some hot springs in Yukon, and the air temperature is freezing. So you sit in the hot spring and the moisture freezes in your hair, and you sculpt your hair, and it's an annual competition. So I have literally just typed that onto my iPhone to hold it there for a sec, and then I'll update my live life to the full sort of bucket list. So all different sources of inspiration. Some things are crazy and silly and funny, and some are huge and arduous. But for me, it all makes up living life to the full.
Okay, so you definitely recommend having a bucket list.
Oh, totally, totally, proactively. But so I've got some tips about doing that. One is to recognize and remember all the things that you have done, because we've all done more than we realize. And once you start going, oh yeah, I took part in that festival, or I did that event, or I wrote that poem, or made a cake, whatever it is, it's good to acknowledge and remember all the things that we have done so far in our life, because that gives us a boost. And it's good to praise our own sort of effort, and it's a good starting place. Then I recommend that people kind of brainstorm what their list could be. So anything they want to do before they die, anything at all, whether it, as I say, literally making a cake to skiing to South Pole. The rules are, whatever you want to go on your list is totally fine. It's your list. It doesn't have to be as big or as amazing or as pretty or as funny as everyone else's. It's just whatever you personally want to do with your life. And with brainstorming, I think the best way is to kind of possibly have a dinner party and get everyone drunk and just all have a really lovely, stimulating conversation about all the things that people want to do and all the countries you want to visit before you die, and then quickly write them all down while you've got a chance. Some sort of stimulation anyway. And write the list. So have it on a website or on a poster on your kitchen wall, on your whiteboard, post-it notes around your laptop, whatever it takes to physically write the list so it physically exists, and pop it up somewhere or share it with friends or on a website, Damien, maybe.
Yeah. So, but a lot of people are like unlike yourself, don't take action. So they write the list, to come up with the ideas, but then come up with a bunch of excuses. So how do you make, is it easy for you to just go, oh, I'm going to go off and do it, and then you don't have any reservations?
No, it's not at all easy. I just know it's good for me. The knowledge that it's good for me, my life, my spirit, my energy, my physical fitness, my mental toughness. I know it's good for me. I know that once I get off my backside and get out there and do that thing, I will feel so much better for it. It's a bit like going to the gym. You're lying in bed all warm and cozy and dry and comfortable, and the thought of going to the gym or taking the dog for a walk is not palatable. But once you do it, you love it. And afterwards, it's called type 2 fun, where you enjoyed it in hindsight. So
Yeah.
type 1 fun is fun at the time. Type 2 is fun afterwards.
Yeah.
So now I have to force myself quite often. And if it's a big expedition, I have to obviously train and get fit for it and save money for it and make it happen. It's not necessarily easy, but I just know we only live once and that we should make the most of it. And I've never been as thrilled and feeling so alive and vital as when I'm doing one of these crazy live life to the full bucket list things.
Yeah. So definitely type 2 is what we should all be looking for, isn't it? So because it's kind
Type
of like
1's okay.
type 1's like immediate, but type 2, you kind of feel a little bit more fulfilled. And then I guess once you've had one, it kind of feeds into the next one, into the next one. You just keep on building momentum.
Yeah, so little easy ones. The two that I always kind of recommend as a starter kit is world camping or world swimming. They're both extremely thrilling and exhilarating, and they give you a little sort of flash of anxiety or adrenaline or sort of a bit of nervousness or whatever, and that's good. They're both a little bit difficult, but totally accessible and free, and they give you usually type 1 fun, but definitely type 2 fun. So world swimming for one night, world camping for one night, or world swimming somewhere obviously safe physically, in a lake or river or the sea. That for me is a fairly easy mini adventure right there on everyone's doorstep.
Yeah, no, very good advice. So now tell me a little bit about your new business, Adventure Psychology. I mean, a lot of people won't be familiar with this, so maybe you can give me a little bit more, or all of us a little bit more what exactly is it?
Yeah, thank you, Damien. I don't think hardly anyone will know it because it's kind of new,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to launch it as a recognised psychology discipline, and I've started a global network as well for it. So the best way to describe it is in relation to sports psychology. They're both performance psychologies, so they're not necessarily traditional psychology or positive psychology, but they're about our performance. Sports psychology really concentrates on peak physical effort, which isn't necessarily sustainable, and also there's quite fixed rules of the game. It's normally maybe an effort for perhaps half an hour or an hour and a half, and there's normally a field of play, and there's rules and regulations, and there's a referee, and you kind of know what's going to happen. So it's really very short peak effort. Whereas adventure psychology is sustainable effort, so somehow a performance that's enduring over a long time, potentially years, but that still manages to take into account uncertainty and challenge. So I think it's a much more relevant psychology for performance during life and during longer experiences or expeditions or even work. So I introduce it to business leaders. How can you sustain your energy and performance and focus and effort and motivation over years whilst also coping or thriving during change and challenge and adversity and uncertainty? So it's a much more useful psychology, I think, than sports psychology. And it's much more enduring, and also it's within nature, and we all know how good nature's for us.
Yeah. So what are the, quick, 2 or 3 things people can, implement almost immediately?
Well, I think one interesting tool, and again, if I compare it to sports psychology, most people will be very familiar with visualization or visualizing success.
Yeah.
Which is great, and I still also believe that's a great tool. So in sport, if you visualize success, you'll visualize the perfect putt in goal for the perfect kick in rugby, and it helps to program your mind and your body to then actually do it. Lots of NLP and useful, science and evidence about that being a very good strategy. However, in life and business and on adventures, it's not necessarily about envisaging the perfect moment. So there's a tool called, I've already mentioned it, Anticipatory Thinking, which is actually sort of, if the worst were to happen, how would I deal with it? What would I do? What would my body feel like in that moment? What kit have I got on me that would help me overcome that situation? How would I get my food? Whatever it is, but it's about putting yourself mentally in the future place, but a place that's not necessarily perfect. So it prepares you to be in the game before you are, but it's specifically for challenging or traumatic or, I don't know, frightening or difficult conditions. So it's called anticipatory thinking. And again, I think it contrasts with sports psychology because it's about pre-preparing your head and your resources for when the going gets tough in the future. So that's one, for instance.
Okay, brilliant. So you've also mentioned to me outside of our conversation about your husband is also an adventurer. So how does that work for a couple, like an adventure couple? So, because normally adventurers tend to be kind of like very one-sided thinkers, not necessarily part of a team. So how does it all come together? 2 of you very driven, objective-driven kind of people.
Yeah, I think one could view adventurers as quite selfish and solo and ego centric, because you do need that drive to push you forward. So I think almost it's a useful trait to be quite self-driven. Otherwise you wouldn't get to the top of the mountain, for instance. So there are certain character traits or personality styles which suit adventuring. And in a way, you have to be, to a certain extent, sort of selfish and self-driven. However, if you take that a bit broader and you believe that relationships are also important, but it's getting the balance right. So when I'm on an adventure, if I'm on my own, then I will definitely be focused and, you know, looking after myself and not worrying too much about the rest of the world, because that doesn't help. However, balancing that with a lovely intimate relationship with, like, my husband, we really support each other a lot when we're together and when we're on our separate expeditions. And it almost feels more intimate because one of us might be going through something really difficult or challenging, but the other is so empathetic and mentally with them that you end up having really quite deep and meaningful conversations in the middle of the night over something that's quite important. So actually, I think it makes the relationship more intimate when you're physically apart. And then, of course, when you get back together, you've got loads of stuff to share and talk about, and you know, have a cup of tea and talk forever about it, and it kind of reunites you. So I think it's about having a healthy balance. And Alex might go off, and I thoroughly support him, and I'm kind of aware of the sorts of things he might be going through, so that helps. We're extremely supportive of each other's expeditions. Now and again we might have to get somebody to feed the cats if we're both away at the same time.
Cool. So now, being someone who lives life to the fullest, what is your definition of living your best life?
Right. So I think we're all individual. We've all got different experiences that we enjoy. And if I'm using some of my psychology degree, I would describe there's hedonistic happiness, which is quite short term. It's like, I don't know, getting drunk or going down a slide in a park. It's quite quick and in the moment and good fun and gives you positive emotion and positive energy and makes you smile or laugh, and all good. But there's a longer sort of life satisfaction happiness called eudaimonic happiness. And it's how can we have some sort of ongoing satisfying happiness, which has its ups and downs. Actually, it's not always perfect. You're not always laughing. So I think for me, living your best life is having a sense of purpose and meaning in your life, having great relationships, being playful and curious and childlike as much as possible, so that you've got a sense of fun in your life, and being fully present, so you're not worrying about the past and you're not worrying about the future. So for me, it's things like that, but we're all different. And I think perhaps everyone needs to think for themselves what it looks like for them. What does success look like? Because it's not necessarily being first or fastest, is it?
No.
It might be, you know, savoring nature or something. That it's, you know. So for me, fully present, laughing a lot, having long-term sort of purpose in my life, and of course doing my adventures for me, because then I feel fully alive.
No, very good. So both of us are, you know, well over the 40 mark, but
No.
not being, not that I have a problem with it. I'm just saying that we, you know, obviously we encounter a lot of people who are reaching 40 or they've just reached 40, and then they have a kind of like a negative kind of attitude. So, you know, what advice would you say? You know, the person who's reached 40 is going, oh my God, it's 40, you know, what would you say to them?
Well, look at me, I'm 53, and some people say I look younger than that, and it's because I love my life. I live life before, I enjoy my best life. So for me, it's about perhaps reframing if possible. So reframing is where you turn an unhelpful thought or an unhelpful feeling into a more helpful one. So not necessarily going from negative to positive, but reframing something, turning it around, looking at it differently, and thinking what's a more helpful way of looking at this thought. And if I'm thinking, Oh my word, I'm 40. How old? That's awful. The best of my life is over. I might as well give up now, or whatever. Um, it's not the most helpful way of thinking to have. It's your mindset, and it affects everything you do. Your mindset affects your whole interaction and approach to life. And if your mindset is, I'm old now, I might as well give up, the best of my life is behind me, then it's really going to affect every single decision that you make for the rest of your life, and what you bother to do, and where you focus your time and your effort and all that. So I guess for me, it needs reframing. It needs turning around somehow to a more helpful way of looking at life. And that might take some work. If it's a habit, and it's ingrained, or if the person is typically quite stuck in that thought, then it might take a bit of work, because habits take a while to change. But it's, things like looking at the actual fact that 40 isn't even halfway yet, really. I don't know how old we're meant to live now to on average, but I imagine it's past the 80s. And it's about perhaps setting a few small goals, or putting together that bucket list to realise that you've got a renewed sense of purpose or passion in your life, focusing on what's in your control rather than what's out of your control. So if you're feeling physically a bit less fit, then what can you do with your body now? What is it in your capabilities now that you've got extra wisdom and experience?
Yes.
so it's reframing it really, and changing the whole mindset to loads of life ahead, loads of opportunity ahead of me. How exciting! I can follow my passion now. Let me write a bucket list and get me going. I'm going to dance naked in the field tonight, because what the heck, I can. Just changing that mindset, because it affects everything.
Yeah, no, definitely. So to close out, what are 3 life lessons that you've learnt in life, given that you've had quite a diverse life, you would like to share with other people and you think it would be of value?
Well, I think the biggest one for me is choose your attitude. You can choose the way you respond to everything, and it's going back to that mindset really. No matter what happens in life, we can choose how we respond, and even if it's negative or traumatic or challenging or sad, we can still choose our response to it. So choose your attitude, choose your mindset. Absolutely affects how you live your life. So that's a biggie for me, just the choice of attitude. I think the idea that we can, I can, you can, we human beings are way more capable than we credit ourselves to be. So once we start trying and giving things a go, then magic happens. So I think just actually giving something a go is a great attitude. So I can, you can, we can, telling somebody that they can, saying yes more is a philosophy which inspires confidence. And then maybe the third one to go along with those is that life is an adventure, and it's not always certain. So just go and explore. What you're going to lose, just try something out, give things a go, put a foot forward, sign up to do something you've never done before. Nobody's really watching you, and the whole thing's an adventure which isn't definite, isn't necessarily mapped out or certain, and we're only human. So treat life as an adventure and see where it takes you.
No, very good. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. I'm sure a lot of people will get inspired to go off and have an adventure now. Shouldn't have any limitations. Yeah. So for anyone who's interested in learning a little bit more about yourself, how can they find you online?
Well, Adventure Psychology is the catchphrase we're using these days. And the adventurepsychologist.com is my new website. So lots of information on there, and photos and all sorts. and a contact form if anyone wants, to ask anything or if they've got any questions.
No, very good. Well, thank you again. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thanks, Damien, and good luck, everyone. Go for it.